Hi, my name's Rob Watzak. I'm a carpenter and also a web producer for Fine Home Building magazine. I'm here to walk you through the construction of the cold frame I wrote about in the recent issue of Fine Gardening magazine. I built the cold frame out of 2 by 6 cedar with 1 by 2 strips to hold the lid together and 2 by 2 pieces to hold the frame together in the corners. The shape and design was entirely based on the size of acrylic sheeting that I could buy at my local building supply store. Because it's not very easy to cut the acrylic cleanly, I figured I'd work with a stock size. To design the cold frame, I used a free bit of software called Google SketchUp. It's a great tool for designing cold frames and other structures, and even works for laying out entire garden spaces. If you want to try it for yourself, just go to the Google SketchUp homepage, download the software, and also use some of their tutorials to get familiar with how it works. You can stop by Fine Woodworking's blog, Design Click Build, or Fine Home Building's digital job site blog to get some good ideas on how to use it. I wanted to make this as simple as possible, so there's actually only one complicated cut in the entire cold frame, and that's the diagonal pieces that go on top of the box to support the tilting lid. It's not really that complicated. All you need to do is get a 2 by 6 the length of the side, and draw a diagonal line where you're going to split it into two pieces. To make the cut, you need to take your saw that you'll be using and measure the distance between the side of the blade and the edge of the base of the circular saw. That's the distance you need to draw a line parallel to the actual cut in order to line up your guide that you'll be clamping to the piece of wood when you make the cut. Just take a couple of small wood clamps and clamp your piece on that line that's usually about 1 to 1.5 inches depending on the saw, and make the cut straight through. I like to clamp this piece of wood to a piece of plywood or some other scrap that you don't mind cutting into so that the thing is solidly supported when you're making the cut. Another good tip, which I think we mentioned in the article, is that it's really a good idea to pre-drill all of your holes. I take a bit and hold it up to the screws that I'll be using, and you want the bit to be about the size of the shank of the screw, not the actual threads. That way it'll go in without splitting the wood, but it'll grab fine because of the wider threads. It's a good idea to clamp a lot of the pieces together when you're assembling them, especially the thin pieces that attach to the acrylic. Now, one note about the acrylic is because it does expand and contract with heat a lot more than the wood does, you should drill the holes through the wood and the acrylic while it's clamped, but then take the acrylic out and drill slightly larger holes, larger than the actual screw itself, so that there's a little bit of room for the acrylic to move once it expands. Once you've got your lid all assembled, the next step is to move on to the box. I pre-cut all my pieces and laid them out on the lawn where I was working, and I figured out where all the screw holes would be and pre-drilled all those holes. Then I took the first layer, stacked it up, screwed right through the ends of the long boards into the short boards, into the end grain. So I'd assemble one layer, then move on to the second layer. Now, to fasten the layers together, since otherwise they would just be resting loosely on top of each other, I fastened a 2 by 2 in each of the corners inside the box. These pieces just need to be a little bit shorter than the full height of that particular corner of the box. And lastly, I fastened the beveled pieces right on top, and the box was complete. Next, it's time to move on to attaching the lid to the box itself. I laid the lid in position and made sure there was an even amount of overhang all the way around. The lid was actually designed to have a little bit of a lip like that, mostly for a place to grab it since it doesn't actually have a handle, and just to add a little bit of a reveal to add some interest to the design of the piece. So once you've got the lid positioned where you want it, take the 3 hinges and slide them under the lid against the back of the box. I like to take a pencil, mark all of the holes where it'll attach to the back, and then also mark where the hinge contacts the lid, and that will help me figure out where to drill the holes to attach to both pieces and to make sure that I've got it lined up properly. Take the lid off, lay it down upside down, and use your marks to attach the hinges to the lid. Once you've got all your hinges on, lay it back on with the hinges laying back over the back of the box like they were when you marked them, and fasten the hinges to the box. Now the last step is attaching the solar hydraulic lift. Now this is probably my favorite part of the entire project. It's going to make it really easy for me to take care of this cold frame because on hot sunny days, a wax inside the cylinder inside this lift will actually open the lid and prevent my plants from overheating, and when it cools off at night the wax will contract and make sure the lid's closed back down. So the instructions are going to vary depending on the lift you buy, but basically all I had to do was assemble it in the position that it would be sitting when the cold frame was closed, and flip the cold frame upside down with the lid in the closed position, lay the lift in position based on the diagrams that the manufacturer provided, and mark all of the screw holes. Then all I do is drill the holes and fasten the screws provided with the lift into both the bracket on the lid and the lift portion that's attached to the body of the cold frame. Flip the cold frame back over and make sure the lid lifts properly with the lift in place, and we're all done. Now all you have to do is find a good place for it in your yard and start planting.